All right. Well, we would like to welcome everybody here to the Fort Douglas Military Museum today. We have a little bit of an audience here in person, and then I know we have quite a few joining us here virtually. I am Bo Burgess. I'm the Director Curator of the Fort Douglas Military Museum, and we have this as part of our Women's Lecture Series, Women's Speaker Series. This is the Sisters in Service for 2022. What I would like to do here is just kind of give you just a little bit of background. We are the official military museum for the state of Utah. We cover all branches of service. We cover all eras as well of military history, both for those who are serving in the military and of course stateside home front efforts as well. We have a women's collection here at the museum, both in our library and then in our archives, photos, documents, and objects as our artifacts. We are continuing to build that collection. So if you know anybody that would be interested in being interviewed, donating items, helping us track down stories to preserve that history of women in the military, that would be great. Feel free to reach out to us. I would also like to, again, thank everybody for attending the lecture. This is a partnership. We are the Fort Douglas Military Museum, of course, underneath the Utah National Guard, in partnership with the Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs, and also the VA Women's Clinic here in Salt Lake City, Utah Honor Flight, and Valor, a Forge Forward publication. I would like to go ahead and turn the time over to Michelle Bridges to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bridges. I'm the coordinator here at the Fort Douglas Military Museum. And in response to help support Women's History Month, we have put together a women's speaker series, and this is our third talk. And today we'll have PJ Jennings speaking to us. PJ, I met her on the Utah Honor Flight, All Women's Honor Flight in 2019. We took a group of 23 veterans back east. Now, PJ was one of the guardians, and nobody could keep up with PJ. She was the person that you wanted to be with because she was very calming in a chaotic area there in Washington, D.C. But she was also very knowledgeable. She was very loyal and very comforting. A lot of our women veterans were glad to have her in our group. And so that's how I met PJ, was on that flight. And I went as a staff photographer, and I couldn't keep up with PJ. So PJ is a 34 years in the Utah, or 25 years with the Army, at the Utah National Guard, and 34 years with the Army Nurse Corps. So she has worked as a nurse, and as a medic, and as a supply sergeant, and as a paratrooper, correct? Okay, so she's going to talk to us about her story and the issues she's faced with adversary, and also her highs with the camaraderie that she created with her fellow soldiers, and what the care that she did as a nurse. I'm going to turn the time over to PJ and let her talk with this.
Thank you, Michelle. And I want to thank the sponsors and my friends and family who are here today, as well as watching. You know, I suppose everyone wonders at one time or another what their purpose in life is. Let me share with you about how I got started. I was born at the Naval Academy Hospital in Annapolis, Maryland. My father was serving in the Navy at the time, and I was the first of 3 children that was born with my parents. My mother died when I was 3 years old. She was 21. She died of leukemia. And one of my father's sisters had the means and frankly the audacity to convince my father to sign over guardianship of all 3 of us children. My brother and I were sent to an orphanage in Indiana, My sister was sent to a foster home, and I'm not sure where exactly that foster home was. By the time I was 5 years old, all three of us had been separated, and I was adopted by that aunt and uncle and taken to Columbus, Ohio. Information about my adoption and biological family was withheld from me, often with the excuse that I was not allowed to know until I was 18 years old, or unless I did everything they told me I should do. And it was hard for me to call them parents, my mother, my father, but for this purpose, I'll refer to them as my parents. In their eyes, I would never amount to anything, even remotely as good as their two sons that they had that were older than me. Their reason? Because my parents, my biological parents, didn't amount to anything. They were no good. They were trash. They were white trash. I grew up hearing that because I was a girl, I couldn't do something. I couldn't have a car, I couldn't go to college. I was bullied by the people who adopted me, who reminded me often, we adopted you out of the goodness of our hearts. I wanted to wear t-shirts and jeans, not dresses. I wanted to be a cowboy or a soldier. Not a secretary, not a flight attendant, not anything that they wanted me to fit into. I hated being a girl and not being able to express myself. Suicide crossed my mind more than once as a child and a teenager. Running away did not work. I suffered sexual, physical, emotional abuse all through my childhood. I was scared to disclose to my friends what my home life was like, always making excuses why they couldn't come over to my house and play. However, I went out of my way to find friends that were Black, Catholic, and Jewish. I was determined to prove my parents wrong and not grow up with hate and bigotry, which was so bad in the 1960s. I didn't understand why. I was being sent as a child to a psychiatrist, but I'd never see the psychiatrist more than once, always a different one. I saw the grade school psychologist, Miss Huey, multiple times, thinking it was part of my school and that all the kids would see her too. My junior year of high school was spent living with my father's other sister, Charlotte, and her family because I was such a horrible child. I was unruly, I didn't fit into what their plan was, so they figured that if they sent me out here to Utah and lived with this other aunt and uncle, that they could straighten me out. I respected my Aunt Charlotte and my Uncle Ted, both of whom were veterans. I made friends and felt accepted. My life was great. My parents refused my request to stay and graduate, and I had to go back to high school back in Columbus, Ohio. I found sports was something healthy for me, both mentally and physically, and it also kept me distant from the house. I never called it a home. I stayed away from the house. I wanted to grow my hair out like the other girls, and I was forbidden to do so. In fact, my parents held my uniform hostage from me, locked it up in the closet, saying that until I got my hair cut, did things their way, I wasn't allowed to play sports again. Thank goodness I had a very supportive coach and PE teacher. She gave me another uniform so I could continue to play. And along with the pair of shorts she gave me were multiple safety pins in order to make sure that the shorts fit me. I felt I was going crazy and thoughts of hurting myself again. I asked to see a counselor there at the high school in order to talk over my feelings and my frustration of what was going on. And guess who it was? Miss Huey was still around from my childhood days. She came over and she sat down next to me, not across from the desk. And she said, hang in there, it will get better. And by the way, I told your parents multiple times they needed to have their head examined. You are just fine. It was the middle of my senior year when I approached my parents about whether or not they were going to attend my graduation. You know, someone said, never be defined by your past. It was just a lesson, not a sentence, a life sentence. Because I argued with them about, yes, I was going to graduate. Yes, I was inviting them. I needed to know whether or not they were going to show up for the graduation. We got into an argument. As I stated earlier, I had experienced many, many years of physical abuse and the emotional abuse. My father came up to me arguing with me that I was faking it. I wasn't going to graduate from high school. I stood up to him this time. When he started hitting me, I decided that was the last time. I hit him, I knocked him down, I knocked him out. I had to get out of the house. In fact, I was kicked out of the house and spent the rest of my senior year at an apartment, living in an apartment at the Ohio State campus. And I eventually made it back here to Utah. I worked for a bank, a local bank, and I also worked for the phone company, but I didn't have any real goals, didn't know what I was going to do. So one day during my lunch break, I went across the street to the recruiting office. It was 1974, Vietnam was winding down. I had just turned 20, so I decided to see what the Navy had to offer because of my father, my biological father. Nothing for girls in the Navy. I walked down the hall and I saw the uniforms for the Marine girls. Yeah, I didn't care much for the uniform. Air Force didn't want to put in writing what I wanted to do, but the Army did. And besides, the Army uniform matched my eyes. I had green eyes. What I wanted to do included going to Germany. So my Aunt Charlotte, who was a Navy veteran, was there to see me sworn in. I called my father and let him know, Dad, I hope you're sitting down. I just joined the Army. He was so proud. He was so proud that I enlisted in the Women's Army Corps. Unfortunately, the following year, at the age of 47, he passed away of a heart attack. By then, I had completed basic, failed to learn Morse code, and was reassigned to cook school and sent to Fort Hood, Texas. It was a very big disappointment for me to not succeed in the schooling that I had been sent to. I was hard on myself, just did not want to be a cook. I felt pressure to get married, and shortly thereafter, the first of my $2 was on the way. It was 1976. I was told that by the time I got back from maternity leave, I would be sent by myself to Korea. No dependents. I had to go by myself. At that time, I was informed that women who had babies, who wanted to get out of the service, could do so and finish up their time in the reserves, which is what I did. I enlisted in the Utah Army Reserves here at Fort Douglas. Internal struggles were painful, questioning my sexuality and my worth as a mother in a miserable marriage and a soldier. I was bored and I lacked training, and the leadership was disappointing. In 1979, I was sent to Camp Williams. I was sent there by the reserves to go to another training school. By then, I had had my second daughter, and I was working in a medical clinic here in Salt Lake. The reserves sent me to Camp Williams to learn radio school, and that was with the 19th Special Forces. That was the first time I had even heard of the 19th Special Forces. I ran into a former reserve member that had been one of my friends. He had transferred to the National Guard, and he said, Jennings, you really need to come over to these guys. They are dedicated. They even knew how to wear their uniform. They actually put an iron to the uniforms and polished to their boots. I was required to go to jump school. I had to be a paratrooper in order to stay with these guys. So I attended pre-jump school training 2 nights a week. I met a trainer. He was a command sergeant major who was active duty but assigned to the Utah National Guard Special Forces. He was extremely critical of my lack of physical fitness. He advised me that he didn't like my push-ups, he didn't like my sit-ups. I could hardly make it up. My daughter was 4 months old. And he said, girl, you will not make it. Wrong thing to say to me. I would exercise every chance I had to make sure that I was strong enough to make it. I would practice landings off of my picnic bench in my backyard. I would do those parachute landing falls. And what those parachute landing falls included was that you had to land with your feet, your knees together. You had to slightly bend at the knees. You rolled over and you hit your calf, your thigh, your buttocks, and your push-up muscle. You had to roll. These were not stand-up landings. Well, one day my neighbor called and she saw my 3-year-old daughter, Heather, jumping off the picnic table with Marcia's crib sheet, yelling, airborne. She hung up on me when I corrected her by saying that, yes, my daughter would get hurt if she didn't have her feet and knees together. I raised strong daughters. I enjoyed the challenges of jump school. I kept up with the men and few women with multiple branches of the service. Remember that command sergeant major that said I wasn't going to make it? I invited him to pin my wings on my uniform on the drop zone on my qualifying jump. And of course, they had to be the blood wings like everybody else. Made him pound them into my chest. Giving myself permission to let go and reset myself physically and mentally was a constant internal battle while working as a medical assistant and a scheduler in the medical clinic, annoying the nurses and doctors because I had questions of, well, why? Why did that kid get sick? Why did you choose that treatment? I was encouraged. In fact, I was told, use your GI Bill, go to nursing school, get on with your life. So I went to nursing school while I continued my military career. It was hard, it was rewarding, it was just what I needed, and I struggled to make good grades. I felt so validated when taking general ed classes. I took a class in psychology. The instructor pulled me aside one day after I asked a question in class. She said, what happened to your childhood? Because I asked her, how does one get over learned helplessness? My career in nursing has been in med-surg, oncology, pain, palliative care, hospice, first through the University of Utah Medical Center, and then for 34 years at the VA Medical Center. It's hard to believe that there are still women veterans who don't identify as veterans. I would see women come in with their spouses or their boyfriends and minimize what they did. The enrollment office and the women's clinic staff got used to me bringing women veterans in for enrollment and for care. I enjoyed my time working with the LGBTQ clinic and seeing more veterans receive their care. I am the nurse who wanted everything perfect. While working in primary care clinic at the VA, I started what we call the drive-by clinic. No guns involved. What it was is I would have a patient come in. Sometimes these patients would walk in, no appointments, and they either had an urgent, an emergent, or a routine question or health issue. So what I would do is I would talk to the doctors and tell the doctors that in between their clinic visits, I needed them to come and staff with me. They would have to come and see me with the patient in order to take care of what the patient needs were. It wasn't very popular at first. In fact, one of my attending physicians told me that I was bossy. My response was, you just don't appreciate my leadership style. So Out of all this, it developed into a really good thing because I developed those relationships with the veterans to be able to trust me that if they called me today, I would return the call today. Even if I didn't have an answer or a solution, I would give them some sort of feedback. This helped with the veterans being able to help themselves as well as improve the trust in the VA care. I felt a sense of belonging and success during the 13 years that I was with the 19 Special Forces, although being taken seriously as a soldier, a supply sergeant, and the first female jump master in the Special Forces unit was a challenge. For better or worse, I made every effort to prove the doubters wrong and make a place for women in the Army. Being physically fit was not only a requirement, but an expectation to be better than the men. I started running and competing in triathlons, marathons, and I was dared by a coworker first as the 5K, and then it led into the marathon dare. Eventually, I was contacted by an officer with the Utah National Guard, and he was the coordinator for the Utah National Guard marathon team. So I had qualified to compete against all the military branches and was accepted and won a place on the Utah Army National Guard marathon team. I completed 12 more marathons wearing the Utah National Guard uniform. I was also invited to run in the 1990 Goodwill Games in Seattle, Washington, which was a real thrill to run with elite women runners. That also led to another assignment with the National Guard. I became the physical fitness trainer. I had to pick my fights, pushing them in to meet the height weight standards and also pass the PT test. While in Special Forces, so many opportunities were not available to women. Being a medical officer or going to combat medic training, I was denied going with my unit to Korea on our annual training because they didn't have any female barracks. Again, I had to pick my battles. I was challenged when I signed up for the jumpmaster training, first by my company commander, then the captain that was in charge of the training company from Fort Bragg. I had heard once again the excuse, you can't go to jumpmaster school because you're a female, you're a girl. What did that have to do with it? Then a captain at the training site advised me that I would not get special treatment because I was a girl. I told him I didn't want the boys to receive special treatment either. I believe in karma. I really believe in karma. Not only did I put my company commander out of multiple airplanes, but the captain at the jumpmaster training was pulled out of the program for harassing me, as observed by others in the training group. I was proud to stand in the jumpmaster graduation formation. It was announced that 60 had started the course. Only 30 had completed the course. 29 of them were jumpmasters after that final jump. And everybody's looking around like, well, what happened to number 30? Said the 30th one was a jump mistress. Again, I picked my battles. I didn't feel like I was being stereotyped because I was very proud that I had accomplished the jumpmaster training that many of the guys could not finish on their first try. In fact, that captain that had harassed me when I had signed in for the course, he witnessed my graduation and the pinning on of my jumpmaster wings. Their trust in me, as well as others in the 19th, was huge. Another company commander trusted me and instructed me to be on the first aircraft, to parachute out of the aircraft in order to be able to go and support the medics on the drop zone. The men in the 19th didn't always come to my supply room for new uniforms or equipment. Often they would come just to have conversation or even to have medical advice. I had a sense of belonging. My commander even authorized me to be able to go to an advanced trauma life support class that was restricted to officers, and I was still enlisted. In 1992, I had been with the 19th Special Forces for 13 years. 12 of those years, I was a staff sergeant with no way to make another promotion because of the rank structure. It was a hard decision to leave and take a commission as an Army Nurse Corps officer and transfer to the Utah National Guard Hospital Combat Hospital Unit here in Salt Lake. I, however, received my commission out on the drop zone after a jump, and it was that commander that pinned the wings, or not the wings, but the rank on me on the drop zone. So remember I told you that I wanted to go to Germany when I enlisted at the age of 20. Well, it only took 20 years for me to get to Germany on an assignment as well as a special duty assignment to Washington, D.C. as a nurse consultant. I realized the need to get out and get mental health therapy to address my childhood PTSD, depression, divorce, child custody battles, fearing the loss of love for my girls, being in and out of bad relationships, and hiding who I was in the Army. Humor was usually a way for me to hide depression and loss. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to prioritize myself, and experiencing counseling helped in conversations with veterans that I worked with in normalizing mental health care, staying connected to family, friends, and allowing myself time off from work and traveling was healthy. I found that what was also good at therapy for me was sharing my home improvement projects with my veterans. I would even take pictures of stages of my home improvement projects. And with that, they felt like they had a purpose. In 2019, I was thrilled to be a part of the Utah Honor Flight as a guardian to Vietnam-era veterans. And it was Utah's first all-women's honor flight. So many stories from so many very strong women soldiers. Besides engaging in professional mental health therapy, I also have a love for horses. I was fortunate enough to purchase my own horse about 18 years ago. There's something special about caring for such a large animal and earning trust together. There's something about being able to stack hay bales, mucking stalls, taking in the sounds and the smells of horses. That was therapy for me. I eventually moved her closer to me, and I'm able now that I'm retired to see her every day. She will be 30 years old on April Fool's Day. At age 50, I entered an amateur rodeo to ride a bull. I thought it was fun until I got stepped on. My 10-year-old granddaughter gave me some advice. Grandma, when you turn 60, do something less painful. That's when I found another challenge. Through the Veterans Recreation Group therapy sessions, many of the veterans, we learned how to do rock climbing. First, it was just going every other week to a recreation center that had a short climbing wall, and we would climb. Then we started climbing outdoors once a month, and we would have a barbecue afterwards and be able to share stories and such. Learning to overcome my fears, this sport unknowingly helped both veterans and myself with their fears of PTSD. Disabilities are not always visible. We quite literally talked each other on and off ledges. I've been climbing for about 6 years now with another lady veteran. We've known each other for quite a few years with community softball as well as serving in the Army together. We have learned and respect the sport of rock climbing. We give attention to detail, just as I did when I was a jumpmaster, a soldier, and a nurse. So here I am now, happily married, sharing 6 children, 12 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren that I love and I am so proud of. I retired from the Army as a captain in 1999 and a nurse after 34 years at the VA. I found a purpose being a nurse with veterans, being able to talk with them, but more importantly, just being there. I have been validated I have a purpose. I wish I had started rock climbing earlier in life, not only for the physical reasons, but for the mental ones as well. Here's what I've learned. See if it could apply to you. Number one, look, think over the situation at hand and absolutely nothing else. No multitasking is allowed. Number two, what are the options? What direction could I go? Breathe, commit, exhale while you're making that move. So important to breathe. Sometimes pain is involved, but it's okay to hurt for a while. That's life. I've left a lot of DNA on the walls that I climb. Trust your belayer. The people at the other end of the rope are my lifeline. My partner, my spouse, my family, or another soldier. Enjoy the view every day wherever I am. It's okay to look back once in a while, but keep looking forward because it does get better. You get out of life what you put into it. Thank you.
This is Baldwin Method from all of us. Thank you for being the speaker today.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a moment. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. It's Dr. Angela Williams. She has just been promoted to be the director of the Salt Lake Veterans Center, and I'm going to turn some time over to her.
So thank you, Michelle. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, PJ, for sharing that story. It was very heartfelt, difficult at times, but you overcame a lot. And if you're not proud of yourself, I, as a stranger, am very proud of you because you set the foundation for a lot of us. Even though it was in the military, that applies to a lot of different situations. So thank you for being transparent and honest with us this afternoon. I appreciate it. As Michelle said, my name is Angela Williams, and I am the new medical center director at the Salt Lake City VA. I have been in Salt Lake City for about 2.5 years, and my predecessor was Shella Stovall, who was very pivotal in me being here at this point today. I'm here today to talk about our women's programs and just to share with you the resources that we have available to you. First, I'd like to say that women veterans are the largest growing veteran population for us right now. We've grown 30% in the last 2 years. We have about 5,300 veterans that are in our programs, and we're steadily growing 3 to 4%. Probably every month. So that's just kudos to the hard work of the women who are at our women's clinics and our women's programs. They are trying to hear you, your voice, and figure out the resources that you need. I would like to share a couple of programs that we have that are available. First, we have a WV2 program, which is a resource and support group for women, and they meet monthly. We also have an acupuncture clinic for women. It's a 10-week program with 10 women, and you meet weekly for acupuncture. There's several things that are coming up in the next few months. In April, we have 2 new programs. The first one is a mindful program, and it's to encourage women to learn about themselves, to know that they have to have self-care and that they need support. And so that will be meeting twice a month for 10 weeks. And then we have a healthy eating course. A lot of women struggle with self-image. They struggle with their relationship with food. And this is a good way for you to find that support and support each other through that. That will also be a 10-week course. In May, we are going to have an equestrian therapy course. And so as you heard PJ say with her horse, we use equestrian therapy with a lot of our PTSD veterans as well as our pain patients, and it has been very successful. And so now we are focusing on our women veterans. And then lastly, I'd just like to share with you, every quarter we have women's focus groups, and I'm just asking you to participate. The value in that is we get to hear some of the things that we are doing well, but also the things that we're not doing so well. And so through those focus groups, you can tell us what we need to improve on. We have a very engaged staff, and women are, their individuals in that clinic are willing to listen and try to give you the support that you need. So we just had the last one this month. It was actually this week, and it was very, very beneficial. So I'm going to encourage those who are watching, who are women veteran, to look for the advertisement for our focus groups, because that's the only way that we can help improve the services and care that you receive. I just want to say again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here. PJ, thank you again for your story. You've truly touched me, and I appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you very much.
So we want to let our guests today know that this was wonderful. Again, PJ, thank you for your story. And wanted to let our viewers know that next week will be our fourth and final speakers in the series. And we're excited to have Nell Bright, who is a World War II pilot in the WASP program, and retired General Brigadier Christine Burkle from the Utah Air National Guard. She's also a flyer, but she was a navigator in a refueling wing and rose to the rank of Brigadier General. She just retired a couple of years ago. And together they're going to talk about inspiration. These two women wanted to fly from the age of young children, I think 8 and 10 respectively. And how they came about to being one a pilot and one a navigator, but they both got to fly. So we invite you to join us next week, again at 3 o'clock, to listen to our Fly Girls. Thank you for joining us.